Good evening and welcome back to another live episode of Red Tinted Glasses, and apologies for the slight delay for those of you that were in the waiting room for tonight's episode. Of course, with the bad weather, I got slightly delayed on my way home from work, so still sitting in, well, I was just in my shirt and lanyard. I've taken the lanyard off because Calum said I should look a bit more professional. But Calum, how are we doing? You recovered from your weekend trip down to Glasgow?
I have, yes. I've recovered from running through the streets of Glasgow to celebrate Ross McCrory's goal. I'm all good. Got a little bit of a cold, but we'll cope. And ready to celebrate a win, baby.
I know, back to back. How about that for positivity on the show for this Monday evening? Of course, as we said, coming to you live on the Red Tinted Glasses YouTube channel. So if you are joining us live tonight, why don't you get involved in the comment section below? Leave a like as well on the video, of course, and hit the subscribe button if you are new to the channel. But Callum, of course, a rare away win to discuss as well. Only the third league away win of the season. We knew this game would have an extra edge with it being Jim Goodwin's first match in charge for Dundee United. We'll come on to that in a little bit. But we spoke about in the preview, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's what Barry Robson did, named an unchanged starting 11, which was really refreshing to see. And I'm just glad that we got the same results as we did last time out.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't really surprised when the same starting 11 came out. I mean, maybe we would have thought Scales might have came in for McKenzie, probably in particular. But I was happy for us to stick as it is. Why change a winning team? I mean, it's not been much. It's not been very regular. We've been able to say even that sentence. So the fact we've managed to do that and then back it up again, fantastic stuff.
Yeah, I did wonder in the opening exchanges if the defence would be easy to fix, as United, like they did kind of in the game in October, started very much on the front foot, exactly as Fraser Waters says, it's the United defence is an easy fix, but I'm glad Jim Goodwin still hasn't worked out to fix a defence, because we might not be sitting here talking about 3 points. But I don't know how much of the highlights you've seen, Callum, if you've watched a lot of it back on Red TV, but it was quite concerning, like I said, the start that we had, kind of giving the front foot initiative to Dundee United, and when you get the so-called new manager bounce that could come, you don't want to be gifting teams easy opportunities. And thank God for Jay Horter, because we could have very easily been 1-0 down in the opening minutes had it not been for a brilliant save to deny Stephen Fletcher.
Absolutely. And it was sort of typical that after we'd given a load of plaudits to Angus MacDonald, that it was his a little error. But thankfully, Horter was alert to the task, the head case that he is, which we'll come on to. But no, it looked like, we did afford a lot of chances. I was keeping up with it on Twitter at the time, whilst we were going through this Glasgow sub-crawl. At the time of the game, we were in very staunch Rangers areas as well, which wasn't very helpful. Made a pit stop in Govan. None of the bars took cash. That was good. But no, it was concerning. I was watching, reading the bits come through. I had notifications on for Twitter for Aberdeen, and it was all Dundee United. And having watched the highlights back, concerning. But thankfully, Horter up to the task, and one of the few times we've actually seen what he's capable of. To be honest, given the 2 games at home he's played in, he's basically had nothing to do, and then Celtic Park, a pretty thankless task.
Yeah, I actually did have to laugh at that point you made about Angus MacDonald as well. Him along with Ross McCrory, I think the 2 players we really kind of stood up and praised on the episode after last week's victory were certainly, I think MacDonald grew into the game, but I thought McCrory, goal aside, had probably one of his worst games of the season. I think me and Brune were calling for him to be subbed off just before he scored. We had some really good shouts that went exactly how we didn't expect them to go during the game. But I thought throughout that first half, Angus was really struggling to deal with Stephen Fletcher. Fletcher was winning everything in the air. We were standing off him at times. We were really allowing United to have that focal point. And I think in the second half, when we nullified Fletcher and things weren't falling Fletcher's way, because it seemed that every second ball was falling United's way in that first half especially, they did kind of fall out the game. But I do also like this point from Craig Grimble saying that the back four wasn't really working as Duke and Duncan weren't doing their job defending. Now, a lot of people do pick up on that point around Duke, that maybe his defensive side of things is lacking. I thought Duncan did okay at that, but again, it probably does attribute to the fact that United were getting a lot of success in that wide areas and being able to get good balls into the box. As I said, McDonald was second to most of them, but thankfully United's poor finishing continued, because I remember saying to Brune, this is going to be a tale of whose defence is less shit and whose finishing is better, and I think over the course of 90 minutes that really told.
I'm not even sure if our defending was less shit, given some of the chances I saw us give up, but certainly the finishing was. But yeah, a lot has been said about Duke's defensive work, but at the same time, I'm willing to let him off at times, given he's the best football player in the world. But in games like that, when you're going to Dundee United, given the whole situation around the dugout essentially, and the fact we're off on the road, regardless of that kind of thing, you do kind of need the forward players to help out as much as possible, which not ideal, I suppose. In Duncan's case as well, he might learn that a bit more with the more experience he gets at this level. But thankfully, it didn't prove costly, as I say, mainly due to United's finishing.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Fraser in the comments saying that Angus MacDonald needs a longer contract, even as a rotation player next season, obviously on a short-term permanent deal or whatever the wording of his signing in January was. But, as I put out from our Twitter account at RTG_podcast last night, both him and Matty Pollock, of course, joining the club in January, seem to really have bought into what the club means to us as fans, and have really kind of got into the whole, I don't know what you call it, the feeling of the club and that sort of thing. And yes, as I said, Angus maybe didn't have the best opening half hour, but there was a lot in white on Saturday night that didn't have the best performances throughout the 90 and throughout certainly the first 45 as well. Like Kaiser pointing out as well, the fact that, we could have easily been a few down at half time, and it probably, had it not been for that poor finishing and good goalkeeping as well, we weren't down. But do you think that we should be looking to already have those discussions with Angus MacDonald over next season, or do you think that's maybe going to be one that we have to kind of wait on? A new manager, of course, will come into that manager discussion a little bit later on in the episode, because I've seen a couple of you already put in the comments about Chris Wilder, and that we will come on to that a bit later on.
I certainly wouldn't be against it. I have a feeling they absolutely are going to wait and see what the new manager thinks as well. But it seems probably from the player's side of things, he seems to really be enjoying it. So if the offer is there, I can imagine he would take it. I personally, I think I have seen enough, at least as you say, to have him as a sort of rotation player, because I mean, for example, earlier in the season, you certainly could have done with having him around. In fact, he would have started for the most part, but he seems a reliable, if not, complete footballer. Defensively, he's a no-nonsense, defend first type player, albeit bar sort of that mistake, which thankfully wasn't punished.
Yeah, and I suppose as Kaiser kind of follows up, saying that he would probably be a good squad player for next season. Not sure about starting week in, week out, but I think, given the fact that with Matty Pollock going off injured, obviously in the second half being replaced by Liam Scales, we would be better having players that we can rely on that are ours, of course, going into next season. And I think McDonald's shown enough already over this short period of time that he would be good enough, whether that is as a first team regular or as a squad player. But it's whether or not, of course, we can persuade him to come up here on a longer deal, which remains to be seen. Unlike when we went to Tannadice in October, Calum, we didn't find ourselves too down at half time, despite United's I was going to say best efforts to do so, but I mean, some of their finishing really was woeful. And I really wondered, kind of what test that would provide Barry Robson, because we really hadn't been playing well. There was a lot of disgruntlement, I felt, kind of coming from the stands. We were really slack in a lot of our play. Passes were poor, wrong decisions were being made. And the one thing I really didn't like about the first half play, and I'm sure those that were either at the game or watched the game through Red TV International or other methods, of course, are available, was the tactic of play that we used, where we looked to play long balls over the top of the United defence, trying to aim diagonals towards Duke and Duncan. And to be honest, United's defence are tall enough to be able to deal with that. Okay, they didn't when they played Ross County the week prior, but just because it worked for one team in Ross County doesn't mean it's automatically going to work for us. And I just felt at times throughout that first half we were far too passive and sloppy in a lot of our play. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is, given the chances United had and the way we were playing, a better quality team would have probably punished us in that sort of game. We were probably just lucky that United were absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, certainly with the chances we did afford them, absolutely. And to be honest, on another day, you probably would fancy Stephen Fletcher to, well, certainly take the chance that was afforded rather early on from McDonald. You'd definitely expect us to be punished on another day, even by Dundee United, probably, let alone anyone who isn't bottom of the league, which is, still admittedly very funny. But yeah, a little bit of a concern with that. But I suppose, given, the way Dundee United started as well, obviously our start didn't help as well. Going by what I've gathered, they did start quite well, and it might have been a little bit of a manager bounce, but without them actually having to take the chance, being able to take the chances. I'm just glad that Jim Goodwin, like when he was up here, did not get any more of a managerial bounce than he did. But it's a little bit concerning. But at the same time, I think credit has to go, because as I can't remember who it was, I saw it in the comments somewhere that, but even earlier in the season, we probably would have come away with that from that game with nothing. And I suppose, as you sort of saw, given the scoreline earlier in the season, then there.
Yeah, that was the point from Graham McWilliam, where he said we wouldn't have taken anything from the game a few weeks back. You could even argue a few months ago, let alone weeks, but much better second half performance, which of course we'll come on to. And yeah, we were better in the second half. United were pretty average. I mean, probably below average, but that's what they've been most of this season. And we were just clinical when it mattered most. The only way United got back into the game at the weekend was, again, through our own stupidity. And that's what I said to Bruno. I said, the only way we throw this away once it went 1-0 is through our own undoing. And it started because Bojan sloppily gave the ball away, and we struggled to regain possession, and Chat McKenzie loses his footing. I mean, the only thing I found bewildering about that whole situation was how long it took for John Beaton to actually award the penalty. I thought he'd been straight on and blowing for that. But yeah, I think for Barry Robson as well, to get that reaction from the players, and the players to have that attitude to go on and improve in the second half, because that is definitely something, Callum, I think it's fair to say, being accused of the players, is that character and the mentality, or lack of mentality in tight games, to go on and actually grab it by the scruff of the neck and take the game to the opposition. And I think in the second half we certainly did that.
Yeah, I mean, myself as much as any, I have been guilty of that, to be honest. It's not only this season, I feel like it's been for a while. When things aren't going our way, I never have faith that they're actually going to turn it around, let alone away from home with the recent form. So certainly credit to Barry Robson and to the players too, but he'll have had to get it out of them. I am glad that that's sort of starting to be the case. You wonder why wasn't it the case under previous management, but whatever Barry's doing seems to be working. And credit to him, and thank God we managed to, even after conceding the equaliser. I naturally, as an Aberdeen fan, thought, oh, for fuck's sake, here we go, chucking it away.
I was furious at 1-1. I said, if we don't win this, it's on Robson. We've gone too negative, and it was just.
And that was you sober.
Yeah. But again, that's just the difficulty of a football fan. You were going from lauding Robson minutes earlier to berating what kind of the negativity. But I'll come on to that in a little bit, because of course, we did improve in that second half. And I think, as Paul Donaldson says, yes, the first half wasn't great, but as it went on, it started to look like United were there for the taking. And I do agree with that from Paul, because I think United were beginning to wilter under the lack of confidence from the fact that they couldn't take any chances. And that probably in the back of their mind, they were getting away with a few things defensively. The first half, Bojan Miovski failed to control ball over the top. Ryan Duncan had a header that just seemed to go nowhere. Just probably caught in two minds of, I think he was trying to head it across to Miovski and got caught in either heading it to him or heading it towards goal. So there was a couple of instances where we got in behind. There was also that chance for Duke, who capitalized on some really poor defending from Freeman, I think it was, where if he clears it, but Duke closed it down, and he should have probably got a shot away, but tried to do too much. However, in the second half, similar situation where Duke takes on Ryan Edwards, and you think, oh, he's left himself with too much to do. What do we know? What a finish that was.
And even better that he sat McMulgrew on his arse as well in the meantime. I've watched the goal back so many times. Anytime it pops up on the feed, I'm watching it at least 2 or 3 times over again. The fact he even tried it is ridiculous. And despite, we know Duke is the type of player who not only will try it, but is capable of pulling it off. I'm still shocked that there's a player for Aberdeen that can do that. But the fact, the way he closed him down, Edwards definitely tried to do too much and should have just booted it out into the stand, mind you. But the fact he closed him down, managed to hold him off, the strength he showed, and then sitting Mulgrew down on his arse, and just the audacity to even try to pull that off, and the celebration as well. Oh, he loves it. He absolutely loves it, and we love him. But absolutely brilliant. Just gutted I wasn't there, but it did prompt jubilant scenes in Glasgow, to be fair.
I mean, I don't even know. Well, I didn't even know at the time that it was a backheel. I thought it was just kind of like a really weird, like, side foot finish. But just the audacity, as I said, to do that backheel. And I mean, I don't know if Caitlin's the same with you, but Gemma said to me yesterday, she said, you post more about that football player than you do about me on your Instagram. And I was like, yes, because he does special things to me.
What? Whoa, let's not get into that. Okay, come on. No, yes, Caitlin was like, oh, you post so much shite on your stories. I was like, look, it's Duke. What can I do?
Yeah.
Oh, God. And some of the photos as well, just absolutely brilliant to come out of it. But yeah, I mean, it's just superb. And it's the type of thing we should expect and out from Duke. But at the same time, it is ridiculous. And the fact he tried it in a game like that, where it's been so tight, given the situation and things like that as well. Oh, absolutely. I don't think I can. I run out of.
Yeah, and I think as well, the funny thing is as well, you speak about the Instagram as well. It was when we had Duke on top of our Christmas tree and Gemma rumbled it. I put him on the side of my bedside table instead. I said, well, if you're going to take him off my Christmas tree, that's where he can stay instead.
Whatever gets you going, Glenn.
Oh, it's a great way to start the day, waking up and seeing his face. But I suppose, yes, we've maybe questioned the defensive side is lacking, but as you said, when he puts in efforts like that, it more than makes up for it. Has Duke done enough to win Player of the Season, and how much do you think that goal is likely to rival some of Leighton Clarkson's efforts for Goal of the Season? Do you think Duke will clean up on both awards when we attend the Player of the Year?
I think quite possibly. And also rival his goal County as well, I suppose. It's just between those two, really. But for Player of the Season right now, I don't know whether it's recent bias after that, but certainly one pops up with that major moment, or a few major moments between now and the end of the season, in a bid to achieve our goals. And I'll be that way because that's just what I do. Just jump on the bandwagon as it comes and goes.
Yeah, I actually forgot about that Ross County goal, of course, and you've got the free kick against Rangers as well in there, there's plenty to choose from. You know, in a season that has been pretty terrible defensively, we do have a fair few options for goal of the season, in fact.
We do, which is a bit bizarre given how bad the season's been until probably recent weeks. So, and at least there's some enjoyment, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the jubilation that was felt in the stands, and you think, oh my God, we're going to see a rare away win, was slightly dampened by the fact that Matty Pollock looked to pick up some form of injury. I'm not sure what it was, but he went down with cramp a little bit prior to needing subbed off. So that was put a slight dampener on things. And it saw Liam Scales come onto the pitch, and I thought, oh, for fuck's sake, here we go. I know the man you wanted to see start instead, so I'm sure you wouldn't have been too disappointed seeing him come on. But I have to say, to Liam Scales, I thought he did fairly well. And I know Fraser Waters put in the comments, it was weird to see Liam Scales come on and do well, because I did think that, you know, as I said, with McDonald struggling in that first half, he grew into the game. I thought Matty Pollock was dealing with Fletcher very well, certainly better than McDonald. I thought, we're now changing that defensive partnership. It's going to come back to haunt us. I also think as well, my only criticism from Robson on the weekend was we just went and sat back a little too early on that 1-0. Again, shades of maybe a bit McInnes era around that, looking to protect what we had. But, you know, thankfully, it didn't come back to cost us too much. It was just, as we've kind of discussed, that one moment of madness, a poor slip in. Yeah, no complaints around this penalty.
No. I saw Dundee United's Twitter, I think it said that he'd been wiped out, and I was like, oh God, what has some absolute lunatic done here? However, I was glad when I saw it back that it wasn't total madness. In fact, I think he did try going to make the tackle, sort of backed out of it, foot got caught, and there's nothing really he could have done about that. In the build-up, however, something could have been done, because I think it was a slack pass to Shinnie, who had was on his heels because he wasn't expecting it or something, couldn't control it. They nick in, and yeah, I mean, Stonewaller, to be honest, and of course Jamie McGrath's going to score it.
Yeah, although part of me was really hoping Horter saved it just to see what he did to the Dundee United fans, because he was absolutely loving life on Saturday. He looked absolutely fired up for that game, and you know, shithouse throughout was really enjoying it, getting up the United fans at all our goals.
Oh yeah, what was the one that's sort of been shared? I think it was when we went 3-1 up, where he was sort of like doing like the aeroplane all around the gaff. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It would have been nice for him to save it, but you know, ultimately it didn't matter in the end. But I do like him. He seems like an absolute nutter, and the people always say you have to be mad to be a goalie, and I think in this case, absolutely true.
Yeah, and I think as well, you know, conceding that goal, you said it yourself, obviously, being out with your friends, you thought, for fuck's sake, here we go again. I thought at the same time, you know, how are we not going to come away with 3 points from Tannadice this season? It's just, quite frankly, inexcusable, and will be the reason why we don't finish in the top six, ultimately, if that was what was it to come down to. But I think Robson and the players deserve that credit for sticking in at the task, albeit we do have a large chunk of thanks to the Dundee United defending, because I mean, watching Ryan Edwards fall flat on his face for the second is just superb. But Leighton Clarkson, I don't know, for those certainly tuning in during this live that were at the game, what their thoughts on Leighton Clarkson's performance was, because I actually thought he was quite anonymous at times on Saturday, but maybe again it's one of those, you know, games where he's quite anonymous but quietly effective, because he kind of pulled the strings, and I didn't actually realize until this morning he grabbed 2 assists in the game. So shows what I know about players that are having terrible games. But good work from Leighton, and really good awareness to pull the ball back to Ross McCrory, as I said, a player that I thought was having a really poor game. Finishes well, and you know, just sends the away end into pandemonium once again.
And he gave it a little bit to the United fans as well, which was very enjoyable. I don't know what sort of stick he'd been getting down that right hand side from the United fans, but Clearly had the last laugh, but also for the goal, as well as Clarkson's brilliant work. Having watched it back, like McCrory sort of drops off a little bit
Yeah.
at the back post and then allows Miovski to go in front of him, sort of as a kind of a screen kind of thing, in a weird way without trying to use too many basketball references. And finished it on his left foot as well, which is almost unheard of. But it's good to see him get back amongst the goals as well. I think this season, well, for the most part, people have probably been underwhelmed, not been helped by how much he's been shifted about from position to position, mind you. But he started off the season on a little bit of goal scoring form, so it's good to see him back amongst it, and he clearly enjoyed it as well. And he's well, now that I thought I could think about it, he absolutely must have been getting stick before he chose to go over to that side rather than to the Aberdeen fans.
Yeah, I know, because it was quite funny. The squad seemed to like split in two. There was half of the squad went to Leighton Clark's, and then the other half were noising up the United fans or joining in Ross McCrory in celebrating that. But as we said in the preview as well, the subs that we were making, if the starting lineup was going to remain the same, the subs would probably be relatively predictable. And Johnny Hayes coming on, tick. Okay, the Liam Scales Pollock substitution wasn't to be expected, but Marley Watkins to make an experience, tick. And I just remember Brune saying, as Marley Watkins got stripped and came on, he said, "We just bringing Marley Watkins on to seal the game." He says, "What does Robson think this is?" And about 30 seconds later, Silky Marley Watkins is back, baby. What a finish. I mean, where's that been?
You guys had an absolute nightmare by the sounds of things. And again, that's when you were sober, so God knows how it would have been if you had a few pre-matches. But I mean, first goal of the season for Marley Watkins. I mean, looks like he's on a hot streak of form by that finish. Weirdly, absolutely superb and good work from him. I think it was Edwards again, perhaps that he put under pressure. Anytime Edwards started heading towards that corner, it was just not good for him whatsoever. But superb from Watkins, and if that's the type of impact he can have more of between now and the end of the season, I'll be happy, because other than that, I can't actually think of anything that he's done. But it was super silky, and he absolutely loved it as well, which is nice to see, because clearly, he's probably not played as much football as he would have liked, or been as productive as he would have liked. So I'm happy for him, and prompted more fantastic scenes. So
it did, and it wasn't just in the stands, of course, as some of the videos show that the club have put out. It was the substitutes running down to join in. So you clearly saw how much the goal meant to Marley himself. He was thumping the badge, and into the crowd. It was the whole players, the whole squad loved it. And I wanted to come back to a couple of the comments that came in earlier in the live, and one coming in from Al Mitchell saying the passion in the team's fabulous. And I think that last goal really summed up the passion. Obviously, Graham Shinney at the end. I mean, we know how much Graham Shinney really buys into Club Robson, kind of referring to that way Shinney celebrated the victory on Saturday as to why he was made captain, going against the likes of me, who said you can't make a lone player captain. So showing how much I know. But that passion and almost, you could argue, togetherness with the squad is, as Al says, helping us win games. Again, showing that we didn't really have that under Goodwin.
Yeah, I mean, when things were going well under Goodwin, it was one thing we sort of picked up on here as well, that there was that sort of real togetherness. And then obviously with the dip in form, it did sort of disappear, because they had nothing to celebrate, in all honesty. But it was good to see, and they were all going. I think that tells you all you need to know. When Watkins grabs the goal, everyone's going absolutely mental for him, and basically shoving each other into the away end as well. It was beautiful. It was absolutely fantastic. And I was just thinking, it's fucking typical that I'm not there after it's been so long since we've had sort of a victory like that. And obviously, we beat St Johnstone earlier in the season and things. But games like that we've missed. And it's a large part of the reason of why we are where we are, and why, or where we were, maybe sort of looking upwards now. But it would be nice to just have that back as regular as possible, and for it not to be another 5 months before we have to something like that to celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose this is another good point that I want to come back to as well from earlier in the episode, was from Michael Taylor. He says it was all about the 3 points. We took our chances when they came around. United never, which is what we've already discussed. We move on to the Hearts game now. Let's keep this going and bag another win. And I think, again, we spoke about it last week as well. at this stage of the season, the performances, yes, whilst maybe frustrating given what we'd seen earlier in the season, certainly in terms of style, is kind of irrelevant at this stage. It is all about the points, and I think there was someone as well put in the comments earlier about the fact that we're maybe now getting that rub of the green that we missed out on previously in other games as well. So, it is maybe just coming to us at the right time. We spoke to Ewan Rankin from the Talk Livy podcast, who said that February was an important month for them in terms of things not going wrong for the hard work that they did in January. And well, Ewan, I'm sorry, it does seem to be going a bit wrong for you lot, but we're there to take advantage. The results kind of played into our hands this weekend. St Mirren's goal difference taking a battering at the hands of Celtic, now, falling behind ours. Livingston, of course, falling to another defeat, and we're taking advantage of these results, whereas earlier on in the season we weren't doing so.
It's just a shame Hibs are now half decent, isn't it? I mean, I'm patiently waiting for them to implode at some point, but it doesn't seem to be happening, which is a bit of a concern for me. But yeah, it's quite ironic that when certain managers have left, we've been talking about the style, about wanting that to improve, and now we're at the stage where it's going, oh, just don't give a shit how we win this, just give us the 3 points. It's ironic, but such is football, and I absolutely agree. I mean, mentioned the Hearts game there. Would take anything, any type of win there. Don't give a shit if it's an own goal off Duke's arse, whatever. Not bothered. We need the points, and that was vitally important. And to get it in the end, a relatively convincing manner, going by the scoreline anyway, is an added bonus. And once again, Horta only not keeping a clean sheet because of a penalty.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose with that Hearts game as well, Hearts are coming into that game on the back of back-to-back games against Celtic. So hopefully, maybe confidence is knocked a little bit, maybe a few injuries. But I like that point there from Paul Donaldson as well. It was good to see that Christian Ramirez is still following us despite moving to America, obviously tweeting out his congratulations to Marley on the back of his goal.
Probably delighted to be fair that was over Jim Goodwin as well. That was probably part of the reason.
Yeah, very true. Now, obviously, Jim Goodwin, we'll go with that link first. Jim Goodwin, of course, taking charge of his first match in charge of Dundee United. Former Aberdeen manager, 6 o'clock kickoff in Dundee. Recipe for disaster? More than likely. Jim Goodwin came out on Sportsound after the match to say that he'd been hit by a few projectiles from the crowd. Obviously not something that we want to see is folk throwing coins or that at anybody, players or managers alike. I definitely saw a few objects being thrown at half time, but I never saw any coins. I just think that's something, that carries a lot of accusation behind it. And, the club obviously put a statement out last night condemning some of the elements of behaviour that let the away support down. It's just, I mean, I understand, I totally agree that the frustration that rightly a lot of us have towards Jim Goodwin for the way things worked out. And, as he said, he did try his best. Ultimately, it didn't work out. But I think people have got to still be able to show some level of restraint in those situations.
I think so. By all means, boo him, whatever. But when it gets physical, just chill out. Go and spend it on a pie or something, and don't throw it at him. The pie or the coin, for that matter.
Yeah. I just think there was a few people. I was sat in the Jerrycare upper behind the dugout, and there were certainly a few people for the opening 10 minutes more interested in shouting dogs abuse to Jim Goodwin than they were probably concerned about how shite we were in that opening 10 minutes. And, I don't know if Goodwin was applauding. I felt he was applauding the away fans rather sarcastically because he was getting the boos as he came out the tunnel. And just in that opening 10 minutes with some of the level of abuse that he was getting directed, I was like, see if they score, he is going to do just a massive get it up. Yeah. I'm just so glad he didn't get that opportunity to do so. Now, the other big talking point, of course, from the game at the weekend was, of course, pyro.
Mm.
Now, the incident, of course, that really caused a lot of kind of uproar, I suppose, if you want, is of course the bit of pyro that very nearly smacked Ryan Duncan in the back of the head. Of course, we both enjoy pyro. We mentioned that on the show last week, but of course, as we said on last week's show, stop throwing it on the pitch. Even more so if you're going to try and chuck it off a player, whether it's our player or not, you're just going to ruin it for everybody else. And how would you have felt if that had hit one of our own players and gone and injured him? I mean, you just need to look at the Man United Liverpool game yesterday to see how crazy Jurgen Klopp was going when a fan ran onto the pitch celebrating one of the goals and just about injured Andy Robertson.
Yeah, I mean, also you're more likely to get caught by throwing it on, which seems baffling. It looks probably better in the stand, but yeah, just stop throwing stuff, man. Just chill. It's fine.
Yeah, but yeah, I just think, just let's not throw it. Let's not lower ourselves to other supports that are out there in the league. Not naming any names, I'll let you all draw your own conclusion to who I'm referring to.
Was there any cannons at Tannadice, by the way?
Not that
Given
I remember.
have you seen the video of the Celtic one?
Oh yeah. No, yeah. I don't think anyone was there with a rocket launcher firing fireworks over the pitch. I suppose the other thing, you can tell I had a lot of time on my hands today with some of these banners that are coming across. We'll get on to the kind of discussion really around the managerial position. Of course, with Alan Burrows taking charge, we've got a couple of weeks till Hearts come to town. So possibly the right time to look to appoint a new manager. We have taken our time so far, so I'm not saying we have to do it, because I do like the fact that we are still taking our time. But does Barry Robson deserve consideration for the manager's job on the back of recent results?
I like him. I'm just concerned that the bubble might burst at some point. I mean, he is clearly doing a lot of good work, and I don't know, for example, if we do go on a tough run, how he'll react to it, given lack of experience. And you can't help but feel that he'd be maybe better off cutting his teeth at a lower level or having more involvement in the first team under a new manager, sort of as a first team coach, assistant, whatever. Given how the last two management spells have gone, I just don't know if another massive risk is a good idea. Although I am happy with him to basically hold it as long as we need to make sure the next appointment is right. Certainly, he wouldn't be doing himself any favors in terms of going elsewhere when he does decide to take on a first team manager role somewhere probably slightly lower down the leagues. Certainly not doing himself any harm in terms of getting a chance with that.
No, absolutely. I think you're right. He's not doing his future career ambitions any harm in recent weeks. But I think the one thing we cannot do is get carried away on the back of recent results. And that's easier said than done, of course. But we have to take into account that he beat a terrible Motherwell side. A Motherwell side on the verge of sacking Stevie Hamill. Of course, he only lasted another week in the job after the victory that we got over the Steelmen. And he's also beat a Dundee United team in absolute disarray. And, no disrespect to Barry, because, he's done a good job in ensuring that we have gone and got those victories. But I would be expecting whoever's in the dugout from an Aberdeen point of view to be going out and beating those two sides comfortably, or beating them respectively anyway. And I think, we've just got to kind of taper that expectation, give ourselves a bit of reality check that, hey, look, yes, we've gone and got those victories, but we really should have been doing so in the first place. Let's not just say, look, Robson's gone and won all these games, let's make him the next manager.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, had it, for example, those two games instead been against Hearts and Hibs, and we'd come out on top then, certainly. But I mean, yeah, that's terrible Motherwell side. I mean, I like to think we probably would have had a better chance against St Mirren had we had 11 men on the park. I suppose the victory against Livingston might help his case a little bit more, decent side, but also, they're
Yeah,
sort of on a downward curve as well, I suppose, at the moment.
yeah. Yeah, I mean the Livingston one, yeah, you could say definitely was well fought. Okay, yes, the goal came about from good play, certainly from Bojan, but as we said last week, probably the one header that Obalai didn't get right. Um, but yeah, I think we just need to be wary of not reading too much into the victories that he's had, given the opposition that we've come up against and the state that they've been in, really. But look, he's done what we want, what we were expecting, and we're wanting of him in terms of winning these games and putting us in a position that will help propel us towards the top six and potential European football. And we've got that game coming up against Hearts a week on Saturday. Of course, we'll do a preview for that next week, and we've just got some time to kind of look back at the weekend's game and these kind of talking points in a bit more relaxed fashion than we normally do. Still keep the episode to probably about an hour, but there's not so much kind of pressure on thinking of Hearts this weekend. We can maybe go and work on some of that defensive side of things and improve on slight areas that I'm sure probably Barry's not been too happy with from the weekend.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned in the post-match press conference that, in particular, in the build-up to the Dundee United game, they've been working on the transition, and well, it worked. To be fair, so that's at least a plus side. Maybe another ticking by Robson's box, I suppose, without getting too Love Island out on here. We'll save that for after. We'll discuss it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, certainly defensively, Hearts will absolutely pose us more threat. They hit us for 5 earlier in the season. However, a new look defence. I mean, you'd like to think, 2 weeks between this last game and the next, Matty Pollock should be back in there. Whether Scales might go back in at left back, I don't know. It'll be an interesting one, but you've got plenty of time to work on it, which is good, but it's also weird as a fan because we seem to be like playing a couple games, couple weeks off, couple games, couple weeks off. Because then obviously we've got the international break not long around the corner either. But at the same time, when you're sort of trying to work out who the next guy's going to be and who's going to be, well, basically has to be a success for the next appointment, sort of an ideal situation to be in. I mean, I'd rather we were in the Scottish Cup, but still.
I was going to say then, from an on-field point of view, then, is this an annoying break to have? Yes, of course, we would like to still be in the Scottish Cup, but we speak about momentum often enough in football, and we've now got that stutter of having to wait a couple of weeks to kind of get going again. Of course, depending how the results go for Hearts over the next couple of weeks, they could be coming into the game with momentum. They could be coming into the game on the back foot. Hopefully the latter. Anyway, it's just one of those things that's just kind of going to stutter us over the next few weeks, as you said, with not being in the Scottish Cup and the international break coming up. But it goes two ways. Kind of momentum's been started, but also allows us to work on things on the training ground.
Absolutely. I suppose it allows you to work more game by game kind of basis, which sounds silly, but now they can just go for the next 2 weeks, all focus on Hearts. And I suppose there probably is, and without thinking he's Pep Guardiola, a possibility that he overthinks things slightly, but a chance more to sort out the simple mistakes that we've been making, because there's good players out there, and certainly at Pataudry, I think we're. Oh, I don't want to say it. We could beat Hearts. It won't be easy, but I think the fact it's almost game by game, given the situation we're being in, given the how low confidence has been, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
True. On the new manager, or potential new manager that's going to be coming in, a lot of the people in the comments that I know you'll be able to see are backing up that Barry Robson, they hope to see him involved in some form of capacity, whether that is assistant manager, part of the coaching staff. How much as well, though, would you like us to retain Steve Agnew as part of that coaching staff if possible?
Without having experienced his influence firsthand, from what we can see, I think you've got to take it at face value. Since he has come in, him assisting by Robson has certainly been helpful. It would be the whole thing's quite interesting because bringing an experienced coach in like him for to be Barry Robson at interim assistant, you would think that there's a possibility of the view that he'll stick around, but at the same time, a lot of managers will want their own coaching staff being able to bring their own people in. So I think it'll maybe depend. There's been a lot of talk about Chris Wilder. You would think those two will probably cross path plenty of time. Both very Yorkshire based as well, I suppose, as well. So I think it'll depend massively. For example, if we do bring in someone from a certain Spanish manager that is currently managing in Scandinavia, for example, I highly doubt he will be sticking. Steve Agnew will be sticking around, but at the same time, stranger things have happened. I think it'll depend.
Yeah,
he would like recruiting a whole coaching staff this season might not be ideal, so it might be until the see how things goes. I don't know. It's very interesting, and the silence is nervous. So I'm not considering.
Yeah, you broke up there slightly, so apologies to anyone if there was a bit of buffering on that. But I think I got the gist of what you were saying on that point. And I guess the silence, as you said, is one that is kind of making us think, is something coming soon? Kenny McIntyre on Sports Sound said on Saturday evening he was expecting a decision to come soon on the manager front, given the fact that we have that time between now and the Hearts game. Chris Wilder's has been mentioned. You mentioned there. I wondered when you said Spanish manager if you were going to refer to the one that's now not working in Japan anymore. The one that's the one that's certainly taking my interest. But would Chris Wilder be a name that you would still like to see in the Pittodrie hot seat? Of course, a man that allegedly ruled himself out of the running for the job a few weeks ago. Do you think the appointment of Alan Burrows has maybe sparked a change in heart?
But at the same time, I suppose what is true and not at the moment. I think it was the Daily Record that time that Wilder had, but he's still been sort of up there as the favourite or favourites for a very. I don't know. At one point, I was very excited about the possibility of Chris Wilder's overlapping centre backs Reds. However, if he had ruled himself out to then come in, suggest there's a bit of doubt there, probably a little bit.
Yeah, I guess if he has ruled himself out, then it does create that little bit of doubt. But maybe the attraction of Alan Burrows brings a different dynamic to it. But I suppose as well, there is, I've seen a few people as well opposed to Chris Wilder because he would use us as a stepping stone to England. I think the same was mentioned with Ricardo Rodriguez, of course, the Spanish manager that I was alluding to, that had worked previously in Japan. But the thing I say to that point is, if these managers are using us as a stepping stone to England and go on to get that move that they're after, then that can only be a good thing, because it means that they've gone and put us in a position where they've done a successful job at Aberdeen and earned that move. They're not going to get a move to England seeing us sitting down in the bottom six. They're going to earn that move to England based on us being in the top six or in Europe, of course. We're doing the same with players, looking to bring them in, low value money, Duke, Miovski, and sell on for profit. So I don't see why doing the same with a manager is, causing issue with people.
I think that's fair. I think it's maybe to do the stability kind of thing, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, for example, if it was Ricardo Rodriguez that came in, you wouldn't expect him to be here for the next 10 years, would you? If he comes in, has a good 2, 3, 4 seasons, gets us into Europe, maybe even a group stage, maybe even win a trophy, I'd be happy with that. And I think it makes the next appointment probably easier because you know the type of mold you're looking for. You know what you're what works at this point, because right now all the last two haven't worked, and I hope they've learned from that. In terms of Wilder using it as a stepping stone, I'm actually not sure. I've had a bit of debate with myself for this because at his age now, I think he's knocking on 60 if he's not already. He's he's taken teams Sheffield United to the Premier League. I think he's sort of been there, done that there. Whereas a chance to come up here and win trophies on a regular basis, I suppose, and be up the top of the table. I don't know if he would use it as a stepping stone, but at the same time, also given the stage of his career, if someone comes in and doubles his wages in the English Championship, then yeah, he probably would be off.
Yeah, Kaiser in the comments saying he's 55. Paul Donaldson asks, what's your views on Dwight York? His name is still floating around in some papers. Well, his agent is certainly doing a good job to keep his name interested. I saw his former Man United teammate Nicky Butt said that he interviewed for the job when Stephen Glass was a successful applicant before Goodwin. I think I'd rather Nicky Butt in charge than Dwight York.
I don't actually know what's Dwight York's. Do you know Dwight York's history as a manager? I'm going to search it up now because I'll inform myself before I do this, which is probably something I should have done prior to now. But
this is the joy of live podcasting.
I know he's managed MacArthur in Australia. They experienced conference. However, young players on loan, then that's fine by me. If you caught that.
No, you have broken up a little bit. There has been a little bit of buffering, but
Okay.
I did hear you say that he was manager of MacArthur in Australia, and something about bringing young players through, was it?
If he wants to get all the best young players from Man United in on loan, then that would be with me.
Okay, well, yeah, but I still wouldn't have him in charge.
No.
But I think it's been good to look back on the weekend's victory over Dundee United. It's great. It feels so good to be talking about an away win, because more often than not, we're talking about an excellent packet of starburst rather than 3 points coming back up the road. But I was trying to even remember when I last saw us win away. And certainly in the league, it must have been last season. Last away victory was Annan that I saw. But even then, that wasn't even in 90 minutes.
Lucky you saw that. Sorry, guys. This has been an absolute disaster. I think my brother's there, so the Wi-Fi's just gone to shite. So I apologise for that. So what were the away wins we've had this St Johnstone? That and Motherwell wasn't there. So since this season, I've seen the St Johnstone out of the.
Well, at least both of us have seen us win once away in the league, so we're doing all right, even if this quality of the podcast is not doing so all right towards the end. So I think what we'll do is just wrap it up by our usual thanking you all for tuning in to another live episode of Red Tinted Glasses. As always, if you can leave a like on the video, it is much appreciated. Of course, those of you that have joined us tonight on the live, your interactions throughout are thoroughly appreciated as well. And hopefully some of the buffering that has been experienced through the episode tonight doesn't affect the quality for those of you tuning in on the audio on catch up later on. But thank you for staying with us, bearing with us tonight. As we said, it's the joy of live podcasting. It's what we like to bring to you every now and again. So enjoy your evening, and so that just in case Calum's one does break off, I'll end it for him. Come on, you Reds!